You write generally about secret history behind a bigger story. Do you find that history is full of secret stories?
It certainly is, because what is officially said about any event is nearly always a lie. Take, at the moment I'm writing about the Russian Revolution. Just about everything that's ever been said about the Russian Revolution is a lie. First of all, the Soviet Union. There's an entire industry, used to be in the Soviet Union, an entire industry of Soviet history that was all false, all fake. And on the other hand, if you read any British or American history of the Russian Revolution written in, say, the 20s or 30s or 40s or even later, it's also propaganda. So it's quite difficult to find out the truth behind real historical events.
So that's what fascinates you in the story, try to get the secret story of a bigger story.
Yes, or part of it anyway, because you never find out the whole thing.
Yeah.
But
well, I like that story you wrote about the Israeli bomb.
Yeah.
It's the same concept.
That's right, yes. Where did they get the plutonium from? That was triple, I know, triple, yeah.
Back in the Cold War, it was easy when writing about the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan to portray the Russians as the bad guys and the Afghans as the good guys, the freedom fighters. Now, your novel, Lie Down with Lions, you describe Afghans, and this novel was written at the Cold War, at the time of the Cold War. You describe the Afghans not as the heroes, but as ruthless and cruel, primitive people who are waging war in their own land. Now, how did you manage to escape the trap of the stereotype of, you know, the Afghans, because they were fighting the Soviets, they would be the good guys?
Well, I think writers always do this. We always take the official story and say, yes, but what really happened? It's not interesting otherwise. You know, we have to give readers something that they don't get every day, and so it's an automatic thing with a writer to say.
Yeah, but what I mean is
what's
that
underneath it.
For many authors of thrillers, really it's easier to stick to the official line. If you're reading Ian Fleming, you know, if it is a Russian, he's straight. He's a bad guy in the Cold War. But that's something that you did not do in Lie Down with Lions. That's what I thought it was interesting, that you escaped that trap, that it's very easy to fall.
Well, I don't know how to answer you. I never believed in the sort of legend of the Cold War. Well, I suppose, you know, my generation, we were teenagers in the 60s. And so we discovered that we were on the wrong side in the Vietnam War. That was a big event for people of my generation, because we had been brought up, we'd been told by our parents, in the Second World War we were the good guys, okay, and the Nazis were the bad guys. So we think, and everybody thinks that their own country are the good guys. And now suddenly we realized that in the Vietnam War we were the bad guys. And that was very shocking. So after that, I would never, and anybody of my age would never believe the official story about the Cold War.
Did you ever get the feeling that Afghan Mujahideen would one day turn against the West after the Russians, or you didn't have a clue about that when you?
There's actually a conversation in Lie Down with Lions between Jane, who's the hero, and her boyfriend, who is a CIA agent. And he's American.
Yeah, Ellis.
That's right, Ellis. And she says to him, when these Mujahideen take over, the first thing they will do is abolish freedom in Afghanistan. And he's kind of angry about it.
There was some foresight there.
It didn't take much, you know. I don't think it took much foresight. I mean, we knew what I met some of the Mujahideen, actually, and you know, that's they were not liberals, man.
Yeah, I bet. Being so successful with historical thrillers, then you changed course and you wrote The Pillars of the Earth. Were you surprised with The Pillars' success?
Well, at first, at first it wasn't a big success. At first it just sold about the same number of copies as my previous book. And in fact I was very disappointed with that, because I felt that I had written something extraordinary. And I hoped people would go, wow, this is incredible. And mostly the industry, the publishing business internationally, mostly said, here comes another Ken Follett book. This is, we print the same number as we did of the last one, we'll sell the same number. And that was, and they, in fact, they were a little worried because it wasn't a thriller. There were no CIA agents, no Nazis.
No quick twists.
That's right. So in fact, most of my publishers were kind of relieved that they sold as many of Pillars of the Earth as my previous book in the first year. And then what happened is that gradually we began to realize that readers were responding to this book in a completely different way. For one thing, the annual sales, many years after, the annual sales of the Pillars of the Earth, for example, in the United States, for many years it sold 100,000 copies a year in paperback, which is very high, much more than all my other books, years after it had been published. And also, it wasn't just the sales figures. I would give a talk in a bookshop or a library or something, and then I would say, does anybody have any questions? And people would always ask me about the Pillars of the Earth. Somebody would stand up and say, when are you going to write another book like the Pillars of the Earth? And then the audience would clap. And you know, when people start talking to you like that, you start thinking, okay, well, I did do something extraordinary. And so
eventually you were surprised with its success, or not?
No, well, eventually its success confirmed what I thought I had. I always thought I'd written something extraordinary. And for a while I thought, okay, Follett, you were kidding yourself. It wasn't that great. It was just a medieval saga. Forget it. But then gradually the readers said to me, no, it really was extraordinary.
Why did you change course? I mean, you were writing very successful thrillers. Why did you feel the need to move into a different genre?
The main reason is that I just thought the story of the building of a cathedral could be a wonderful popular novel. And you know, I was also young enough at the time that I wasn't scared of it. You know, when you're more mature, you become more timid, don't you? And if I'd become a best-selling author in middle age, I probably would have just written. So
you wrote it as a conqueror. You were conquering new grounds in.
I just wasn't afraid of that. I just thought I could, as you do when you're young, I thought I could do anything. I thought this could be a wonderful popular novel, and why shouldn't I be the one who writes it?
As you said, you know, the kind of writing of Pillars compared to the thrillers is totally different. The pace is different. There are not so many twists. You have more time to build up the characters, more time to build up the story and the plot. How hard was it for you to change your writing style in a way?
Well, in some ways, I didn't change, and writers can't change. You know, the story is different, but it's very eventful. The Pillars of the Earth is very eventful. Something's happening all the time. Most novels that are that long, it's 375,000 words, it's a very long book. Most novels that are that long proceed at a rather majestic pace. They go slowly, and there's a great deal of detail and atmosphere. And the Pillars of the Earth, there's stuff happening all the time. And I realized when I wrote it that I'm not capable of writing a book that moves slowly. I just can't. And so I just had to invent more and more incident. So there's always something happening. It's not the kind of twists and turns that you get in a thriller. They're different twists and turns. But it still is a heavily plotted book.